If you look at a platform like LinkedIn, 1% of people on the platform create.
My two pieces of advice to any agency out there in the insurance world that is looking to get into the content game is, number one, start. Number two, don't stop.
There is no better way now for a business or an executive in a company to build trust than showing up consistently with genuinely good content that's going to help somebody.
Digital marketing means so many different things to so many different people.
It doesn't have to be what the top influencers are creating. It doesn't have to be super well polished, high quality when you're first getting started. The biggest thing is to get started, and you'll improve over time with it.
Influencers are a completely different thing now than they were 30 years ago. Did we have influencers 30 years ago? Absolutely we did, but they didn't have the platforms.
The value that you bring as an agent or a broker is your human expertise and understanding of the industry, not something that's been watered down or that they could find from Google's AI generated search results. There are so many tools now that are at our disposal that if you even spend half an hour doing research, you can figure out how to get started.
You have to be willing to be vulnerable and authentic in your content too, depending on what your topic is, right? So for me, I'm going to be 100% authentic 100% of the time. Like, I don't have secrets.
Pretty much every time I get onto a stage, there's somebody who wants to come talk to me about some problem that they have or a way that we could partner with one another. There is always some sort of opportunity that is created from being in that environment.
People get upset when somebody decides to unsubscribe, like they've personally offended you or whatever. The reality is we should thank them because they just made our pipeline more accurate.
From a research standpoint, over 60% of the time, people that are making buying decisions, both B2C and in like the commercial or like the direct to consumer space, they're doing it by the first person that gave them information in their buying cycle.
We just created our next book, which is a daily sales reader for commercial producers, that now they can get this book, they can get the ebook downloaded on Amazon. And guess what else we're going to do? We are going to do a 365 episode daily podcast that if you're going through the book, you can then go and you can get an additional 10 minutes of insight into whatever that fundamental thing was that we talked about. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. Today, we're going to talk marketing, all kinds of cool stuff. My guest is Ms. Emma Roloff from Roloff Consulting, and she is ingrained in the insurance space. Some of you may have heard her on my good friend Ryan Hanley's podcast, or you might even know her on her own merit. Her and her husband run a consulting firm that help agencies like yours and mine and other companies in the insurance sector improve their presence on social media to get the word out in what I like to refer to as quote unquote the right way. What that means, who knows? It changes every day, but I mean, with the way that things are evolving right now with AI and everything else, I think we probably need to like have a round table at some point in a dark room and come up with like, what are the rules moving forward so that we understand the right way versus what everybody's doing. Because let's face it, it's the insurance industry, and we have a bit of a reputation for trying to do things as quickly as we can to get things done. Not necessarily the right way in many cases. And so as ChatGPT and other large language models become more and more prevalent, I have a feeling that agency effort for sales and marketing tactics are going to drop off the table because of our reliance on that, when we all should be realizing that that stuff's only as good as the person sitting behind the keyboard anyhow. So with that being said, before we get cranked up too much, why don't you just give us like the 10,000 foot overview, kind of like what I hate that I'm asking you to do this again, but a little bit of a rewind of what we were talking about right before I hit record.
Yeah, no problem. So as you said, I run Roloff Consulting side by side with my husband, brave man, choosing to not only be with me in life, but in business.
I resemble that remark. Honestly, my wife, everybody says that all the time too, about how do you do it? What's it like working with your spouse? Actually, it's awesome. I mean, we're kind of best friends. That's why we got married, and we know how to do
trust. Yep. Yeah.
Like, and I'm not telling you that it's a bowl of cherries every day. Certainly we butt heads on certain things, but I mean, we have predetermined dispute resolution processes in place too to keep it from bleeding over into, our marriage and everything else. But no, I mean, I absolutely love working with my wife, and hopefully one day I can get her to come into the agency with me.
I think it does, like why you make a good pair in life is why you make a good pair in business, and it's nice for us to be able to have someone that you trust to work with side by side. But we both come up through the world of sales, and he was predominantly focused in the digital marketing space, so he's got a lot of background there as well. And while I was selling, COVID hit, and every tool I had went away, and I had to get scrappy and figure out a different way to get in front of people and start selling different than I ever had before. And so I got pretty good at the social media game, specifically selling to businesses and kind of figuring out how to crack, I would say, the social media side of things for business sales as opposed to, clothes and makeup products and whatever else. And about 2 years ago, I joined him in the consulting company, and now we focus on implementing a framework that we've developed that focuses on creating educational content as the vehicle for people to want to come and work with you. So we call it the favorite teacher framework. We might get into this before, but I used to be a high school teacher, and that mentality of being an educator is what made me really good at sales and has made me really good at creating content that resonates with people. And so we have hands-on advisory services that we work with companies to implement our framework. And then we run an online community for individuals who are looking to kind of get their hands around this idea of social media, personal branding, and that digital strategy in more of a group coaching environment.
I know we haven't really known each other very long, so I'm going to give you some pretty direct advice. You really need to find some stuff to take up time on your calendar. I don't feel like you're spread thin enough. Like,
Well, and then I do keynote speaking and I travel all
yeah,
over the place to do that too. So, I do need some hobbies.
yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, but that's what keeps me motivated and stimulated. If I was sitting around trying to figure out what was next, I would never get anything done. So, what actually, to be honest with you, what really struck me more than anything else, and God, it's hard to believe, is when you were talking about what happened during COVID.
hmm
And then you said, and then 2 years ago, like COVID happened, and then we've had enough time between that. It's really hard to believe it was as long ago as it was at this point. But
I know.
man, and I speak a lot too. I always tell people it's tough because obviously a pandemic is not anything any of us want to ever have to go through again.
No.
But there's a lot of things that happened because of COVID that have made the business world better, in my opinion. I mean, if you're
Oh,
looking
yeah.
for a silver lining in the cloud, there's stuff to be found there. So it was just interesting that you said that. I'm like, holy crap, COVID. Then 2 years after, it's like it's hard to believe it was that long ago now. So let's get into it. Digital marketing means so many different things to so many different people, and I mean a lot of it starts with intent, whether it be brand awareness or,
Mhm.
you know, general people out there to beat their own chest because they want people to see them and be visible. Education because you understand that you need to educate people to gain their trust and bring them into their ecosystem. I mean, there's a million different things out there. So,
Mhm.
where did you start and why?
So that last piece that you brought up, this idea of trust building, when you look at any sort of sale, whether it's the software that I was selling or being an agent and a broker and selling insurance products or uh, going back to even clothes and makeup and whatever else, it essentially comes down to whether the person that is buying from you trusts that you are going to deliver the product that you said you're going to and trusts that you're going to help them solve the problem that they're looking for. And in the last 5 years, that how we build trust and what that looks like has substantially changed. And a lot of it comes from COVID, but we were starting to see the moves before then, but COVID just like absolutely accelerated that. And there is no better way now for a business or an executive in a company to build trust than showing up consistently with genuinely good content that's going to help somebody. And if you can get really good at doing that, you are going to have people that want to do business with you. You're going to have opportunities that present themselves to you that you can't create in a different way today at the same speed. Now, when we look at, you mentioned Lydia of like in insurance, there's like, we're gonna do it quick, we're gonna get out there and we're gonna get things started. So sometimes when you say something like a digital marketing, or we call it a digital sales strategy because it's where we think sales and marketing meet, a strategy like that takes about 6 months for it to fully like get to the level where it is creating leads for you and building what you're hoping it would build. In the grand scheme of things, 6 months to build trust at scale and become an authority in your industry is actually a really short period of time. And you can become an expert and do things that you could never imagine were possible through the use of social media and digital assets. But 6 months feels like a long time when someone says that to you. But I'll give you the example of like my own career. So COVID hits, I'm selling software, I'm selling well. I was our top performer at that point. I had a very large quota that I had to keep up with in going into COVID. And I typically was going really referral heavy, doing some cold calls and some emails and like some webinars here and there. But really, I was dependent on leads that were coming in and relationships that I could build at events and like getting that referral network started. I started creating content online. First started with a podcast doing interviews where I wasn't even really putting myself in the expertise position. I was just talking to other people and like asking questions. Then suddenly people started reaching out to me to do their podcasts. And I got the opportunity to be in the seat of sharing my knowledge and my expertise. And then I got comfortable with the idea of positioning myself that way. And I started to create my own videos and content in short order after that. The minute that I started to create that content, speaking opportunities started to come forward. And, you mentioned you speak. I don't know about you, but pretty much every time I get onto a stage, there's somebody who wants to come talk to me about some problem that they have or a way that we could partner with one another. There is always some sort of opportunity that is created from being in that environment. And then I was able to get myself to be, then suddenly there were award nominations and stuff like that that like really dignified me as an expert in my space. Not that I had gained any more knowledge from outside of what I was doing prior to that, but these things started to click. Whereas at the time, 30-year-old woman in software sales selling into industries like insurance and healthcare, where I had predominantly been the person someone would look over the top of my shoulder to talk to my boss instead of talking to me as the expert in the room, suddenly I was given a place on a stage. I had thousands of people that were interested in what I had to say, and this expertise happened within less than a year. And that recognition came within less than a year. And it completely changed the trajectory of my career and completely changed, like now, what our business does and how we operate is all driven by opportunities to add value to people first and then have them come want to work with us.
So, how did you leverage your experience of being in software sales to turn into a great content creator that's not in the same industry?
Well, so a lot of the customers that we work with, like you mentioned, we have people kind of all across the insurance life cycle. A lot of the companies that we work with are still in the technology space. So I'm still tapping into experience from that standpoint. But truthfully, at this point, learning how to like make content is so easy in comparison to what it was when I started. When I tell you how like if I actually explained step by step what creating the first couple of videos that I did in the early days of COVID was like people would be like, I can't believe you stuck with it because it was so clunky and it was so hard to just do at your house in comparison to now. I can pick up my phone and I can create high quality content with a nice camera on my phone into TikTok or Instagram or just even on my phone itself. I have multiple apps on my phone where I can edit it. If I want to make graphic designs, I can go into Canva and click around a few times and change the colors on a template and make it look really nice. There are so many tools now that are at our disposal that if you even spend a half an hour doing research, you can figure out how to get started. And so that's the other piece is it doesn't take as much to get going as it used to. And then once you get going, if you are good at reading signals that come back to you, you realize like, ooh, when I do this kind of content, it seems to really resonate with exactly who my target demographic is. And I get comments from them or I get questions from them. And then content creation just becomes this really easy flywheel. Because if you create a really valuable video and you put it out onto YouTube and it's, explaining 5 things that anyone needs to know before they purchase this kind of policy, it might take 6 to 9 months for it to get traction and questions and interaction. But the second that you get a question from somebody on that video, you've got a whole new video that you can create. Or if you get really good at having prospect meetings where you're paying attention to the questions that they're asking you. So like, what's the first question you meet with a brand new like prospective client? They sit down with you. What's the first question that they ask you typically?
That's a really good question. Usually we're breaking the ice, so it might have something to do with where I went to college or how long I've been in the industry, something along those lines. But the reality is, I'm probably not the best person to ask that question to because I've prepped myself to where they kind of know who I am, what I'm about, what I know about, what my areas of expertise are long before I ever get into the room for that meeting, which is probably really the right answer to that question, but it's not what most people have in place. But I'm a big believer in your website and your LinkedIn profile are your online resumes, and they better be tight, or when you get in to meet with people, you're probably not going to get in to meet with people,
Hmm.
honestly. But it's funny as you're sitting here talking about all of these things, I was going to say, don't tell anybody, but we're actually creating a lot of content right now. Like
Oh,
there's
well, yeah.
already content on LinkedIn about this podcast, and we record this in audio and video, and obviously it becomes a podcast, but it also gets chopped up into reels and shorts and TikToks and everything else. And I think that's one of the things, over the course of the last little bit is all of the tools that are out there that make it so much easier to do this stuff than what you used to be able to do it. Like
Hmm.
I can take an entire hour podcast video, pop it into Munch, and in 20 minutes, I'm going to have 30 shorts that are 60 to 90 seconds long with transcriptions in a preset branding kit that my team created in the software. But we're not having to find the pod. Like I used to have to sit here and mark different sound bites or try and
Hmm.
remember where they were. AI picks up on all of that stuff now. And then we can go in and we have to add the human touch to that to make sure that thought patterns are completed, or that it's not like a thing that AI thought meant one thing but it took it out of context. So it's not like you just push a button and it's done. But the reality is, I think so many people like number one, number two excuse. What do I talk about? I don't have enough time. Period. Like you'll hear that everywhere you go. How do you solve that problem? You record everything you do every single day. You want to get great sound bites to talk about educating your prospects. Take your recorded phone calls where you're explaining what ordinance and law means from somebody, put it behind a meme, have it animate some text behind it with that recording of a real call of you explaining it. You just created content and you didn't have to do much of anything outside of what you were already doing, which is answer phone calls and people's questions in order to do it. You have to have a desire to do it. It's not that you don't have time, it's just not become a priority for you yet. That's
Hmm.
why. And so, you know, really my 2 pieces of advice to any agency out there in the insurance world that is looking to get into the content game is number one, start. Number two, don't stop. Like it's really that simple. Like, is your content going to suck when you start? Yep, probably is. Just like,
And no one's going to be watching as closely as they will when you
yeah, you
get
got
better at
but
it.
your mom and your aunt Frida are your two followers on social. So, and they're going to tell you how beautiful it was anyhow. But did a baby gazelle run as gracefully as soon as it was born? No, we've all seen the nature documentaries. They get up
Hmm.
and they're wobbling around because their legs can't even support them. Content creation's no different than that. But ultimately, guess what? They become pretty darn quick and agile, and we can do the same. So we can't just be lip service. We have to say we want to do it, then we actually have to start. But the other thing is, don't stop. Some of the best advice I ever got when I started this podcast was from Bradley Flowers and Scott Howell from Insurance Guys, because they said, don't even look at your stats. Wait till you have 50 episodes. After you've had 50 episodes, then you can go look at your downloads and see what they mean. But if you try to look at your stats and how fast things are growing as you're doing it, you'll quit. You'll never, you just have to say up front, I'm going to commit to 50 episodes one a week, however you're going to do it, then go do it. They were right. As you
The
go
other
back and
thing is
look
to
at it,
put
it's
the other thing is
crazy.
to put numbers into perspective.
Oh yeah.
And we talk about this a lot in our community. So, like, when you are on LinkedIn, let's say you have a post that gets 250 impressions, and you have heard about people that have millions of impressions and blah, blah, blah. You think, like, oh, that's not going to anybody. One, all it takes is the right one or two people to see that post for it to make a difference for your business. But beyond that, that's like a sold out movie theater. Those 250 people are a sold out movie theater. And if you were going to stand up in front of that crowd, you would be jacked up to have that many people that wanted to listen to your message. Then you like fast forward to maybe you've gained traction and you have a video that pops up and it gets really great engagement, or a post on LinkedIn. Maybe it's not even a video, maybe it's your meme, whatever. And all of a sudden it's got 20,000 views. Those 20,000 views equate to 20,000 people that would fill up Madison Square Garden. Though those numbers are not attainable with the like the old way of doing things. And so if you want to be able to scale and get in front of audiences with a relatively small amount of effort, this is the perfect tool that's sitting there waiting for you, and you just have to prioritize the time to do it. And when you do this well and you do it continuously over time, it starts to replace other types business development activity that you've had to do in the past. So it's not just dedicating more time, it is reallocating time to a higher scale, higher visibility tactic that we now have at our disposal.
100%. So where do you think most people make their mistakes when they start out?
I think we overcomplicate it.
Not that I'm asking you to give me the whole consulting playbook here,
Oh,
but I
no.
mean,
I would say there's a couple of things. One, so you mentioned earlier the idea of people feeling like they want to do social media to be boastful or like have an ego or whatever else. And there's a certain amount of like, oh, I'm going to be perceived by other people by what I'm creating and how I'm creating it. If you can step outside of that mindset, and this is why we have our favorite teacher framework, and step into the mindset of becoming someone's favorite educator tied to insurance, you are no longer focused on yourself. You are focused on helping other people. And hopefully that's a goal of yours. and and when you can focus on educating other people, it takes some of that like vulnerability that might be associated with content creation, or like that feeling of being perceived, like away from the equation, and allows you to focus on the content that you're creating. I also think way too many people overcomplicate what content has to be. And it, like, to your point, record a conversation with somebody in your agency talking about the industry. Talk for an hour about a bunch of random different things. Spend time looking at articles that are coming up or talking about issues you've been having, and then take that and turn it into content. Obviously, keeping like proprietary stuff out of the fold, but like take that and create content with it. It doesn't have to be what the top influencers are creating. It doesn't have to be super well polished, high quality when you're first getting started. The biggest thing is to get started, and you'll improve over time with it. So I think those are the two biggest things, is kind of taking yourself out of the content and stop overcomplicating it. And all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier to start going. The last piece that I would add is thinking through what you're going to enjoy the most and how you're going to actually appreciate the process of content creation. Not everybody is comfortable being on video like we are right now. Not everybody is super creative and good at making something that's like visually pleasing. You've got to play around with different types of content to go to like your Instagram or a LinkedIn or wherever your target demographic is. Play around with different types of content, because what you enjoy making is what's going to offer the most value to people. So I'm a video heavy person. You go to my LinkedIn page, go to my TikTok. Obviously, TikTok is video. It's all very video heavy. My husband is a writer. He doesn't necessarily enjoy being in front of the camera as much. He'll do it. He does do it because he recognizes the value of it, but like he writes long form blog content and does text posts and a lot more in that direction. Someday he will probably write a book. Like that is not my MO. I am much more in the other direction, but we've both figured out what works. And when you figure out what works, you stay consistent and you keep going.
Yeah, and I think we need to open our minds a little bit about the setting or the platform. So here's what I'm where I'm going with this. This is for all of you out there who don't have time. I don't really have time to add more things into the fire either, but I do all the time, every day. And when my oldest son started working here at the agency, I knew he was going to have a lot of questions that a younger producer would have. So one of our best things that we ever did is Carpool Closer. That's my handle on TikTok. And it's literally us driving to the office and from the office every day. And we could get probably 4 or 5, sometimes 6 questions that he would ask and I would answer into reels, shorts, and TikToks. And we would do that every day to the office, from the office. It would go on TikTok, it would go on Instagram, it would go on YouTube, everywhere, right? And guess what? It was valuable to him because he's getting trained in real time from somebody who's been doing it for a long time. And we were able to distribute that content out and grow our own online community with producers who needed that support. Take that
Mhm.
and fast forward it. I don't have a problem with video. I don't have a problem with writing. I'm the person that will try anything once. I'm naturally going to gravitate toward what I like the most. But as I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, my goodness, like we've got a lot of stuff here. What about all the people who don't go on TikTok, who don't watch shorts or whatever? Like it's not really the same type of stuff that I would put on LinkedIn. Maybe if it was a really good question and a really good answer, would I do that? But it's just really just raw video of me driving my truck, hands 10 and 2, looking forward the whole time. People have
There's
commented,
someone else there to video,
yeah,
right?
believe me, people comment, I thought you were in insurance and risk management and you're recording videos when you're driving down the road. Do you see the trees moving? We're at a red light. But anyhow, the idea was, you know what? We got so much more here than we realize. Why don't we make this the next book that we publish? So we took all of the Carpool Closers. We did exactly 365 of them once we came up with this idea. We took the transcriptions, we fleshed them out and made them longer with a list of 3 challenges for a producer based on the topic of that question that they could focus on for that day. And then, of course, if you're going to write a book like that, you have to have an inspirational quote from a famous athlete or something at the bottom of every page. Like, so we checked that box too. But essentially, we already had all this content created. We just created our next book, which is a daily sales reader for commercial producers that now they can get this book. They can get the ebook, download it on Amazon. And guess what else we're going to do? We are going to do a 365 episode daily podcast that if you're going through the book, you can then go and you can get an additional 10 minutes of insight into whatever that fundamental thing was that we talked about. It all started with me answering my son's questions.
Hmm.
And we recognized this as an opportunity and it morphed into God knows where it's going to end at this point, right? But
Yeah.
that's how crazy it is. And I get it. Not everybody thinks through that thinks about things that way. You know, they don't I don't know too many of my friends who are like, you know what, let's just record on the way to and from the office every day. That was just more along the lines of me saying, oh, you don't have time, let me show you what not having time looks like but still creating content.
Yeah. Well, and even once a week, you get off of a prospect call and you think of one question that they asked you and you make a video explaining how you explained it to that prospect.
But Emma, COVID changed everything. Prospect calls are on Zoom now, they're all recorded.
Well, that's true too.
And that's the thing that's crazy, right? So not that I would go and publicly put a prospect call out on LinkedIn or whatever else, but I can certainly take sound bites of me
Hmm.
explaining a concept or even walking through the sales process. But admittedly, every one of my Zoom prospect calls during COVID and literally after they're now also on Zoom. COVID changed that for pretty much ever at this point.
Hmm.
I share them in my online community where I coach other producers. Now I'm not just telling you what to do, I'm showing you that I actually do this in real life. Here's an unedited, like if I screwed something up, I left it in there. I want you to see, don't do this, right? And
Yeah.
I'll say, here's where I messed it up. This is what I would do differently next time. But it gives you an invaluable tool, especially if you're like into community building and you have like, a coaching program where you're developing other people. That's huge. But I think the other part of it too is you have to be willing to be vulnerable and authentic in your content too, depending on what your topic is, right? So for me, I'm going to be 100% authentic 100% of the time. Like I don't have secrets. That probably makes some people feel uncomfortable, but in a conversation, what you see in front of you is what you get. That also turns into the single greatest compliment that I get when I do go out and speak. I was out in Oregon, spoke at the Big I, going on 3 weeks ago now. Flying out there, I'm like, who the heck do I know in Oregon? Maybe a few people. I could count on one hand. I got out there, over half the people there knew who I was, followed the podcast, read content, whatever else, came up, had conversations. Always, I don't meet strangers anywhere I go most of the time, but it was really cool to sit back and say, here I am, literally, if you drew a diagonal as far as I could get away from my home. And these people know who I am. They follow me. And the compliment that I get is, you're no different online than you are in person. You're literally the same person. Well, yeah, I'm a big dumb animal and I can only be one person. But at the end of the day, that's it. To me, that is it in a nutshell. If be who you are and be okay with the fact that you're not for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think in marketing specifically, this is where we get it wrong way too much. I had a podcast. I don't recommend too many of my guests go back and listen to other podcasts. I would recommend that you go back and listen to the podcast we did with Jay Schwedelson, if you hadn't heard it, about email marketing specifically, because it was fantastic. The dude's an absolute beast, but we were talking about it and specifically got to the point where we were talking about people unsubscribing from your email newsletter or not following your content anymore, whatever else. And I said, you know what? I said, it's crazy. His whole point was this. People get upset when somebody decides to unsubscribe, like they've personally offended you or whatever. The reality is we should thank them because they just made our pipeline more accurate. Let them self-select that they're not interested in what you're talking about. Be okay with the fact that you lost somebody on your email list, but love the fact that your email list just got more accurate to being nothing but your ideal prospect in there. And that, I think, is a really big piece. A lot of people, I think, focus on the wrong stuff, right? Like we could even talk LinkedIn about that. I put something out on LinkedIn. I could look and see how many impressions did I get? How much interaction did I get in terms of likes, reposts, comments, or whatever else? What does any of that really mean? What does it even translate into? Is that generating business or is it a popularity contest? But when I see somebody clicked to look at my profile, I'm like, okay, now I've got somebody. Now I've got them. This is somebody that listened to my content and they cared enough to go find out who's this dude. If they follow me, then I know that it resonated. If they choose not to follow me, I'm okay with that too. If you're one of those people, I know who you are. I have LinkedIn Premium. It tells me you looked at my profile and you didn't send me a connection request or follow me. I just want to let you know when I'm going to run into you one day and I'll remember that. But no,
And
I
I
mean,
think
seriously,
so. We talk a lot about the idea of lurkers, and
dark social is it's a whole animal, right?
yeah. Well, if you look at a platform like LinkedIn, 1% of people on the platform create. 10% contribute, like commenting, liking, whatever else. The other 89,
the other 70% send automated bot emails to you the second you connect with them.
Yes, but I mean, the large majority of people are just watching. And to your point, there are other so maybe they don't publicly want to like something or comment on it, but if they go and they subscribe to your newsletter or they quietly follow you or they come up to you, one of the best compliments I could ever get, and we talk about this a lot in our community, is people will be like, I'm surprised how often I'm at a conference and someone comes and names a very specific post that I made that had an impact on them and they've never once commented or interacted with anything. And I was like, well, that means you stuck with them. And again, you're not getting the vanity metrics in the background,
Right.
but you don't need vanity metrics to grow a business. You need the people that were impacted by your content to want to work with you. And
100%.
like that's, it feels nice to have something go off. And like I can tell you, I've had videos that have gone viral on TikTok with millions of views. I don't think I've ever gotten business from one of my memes that went over 1 million, but I have gotten videos that have had less than 2,000 impressions that converted 70 people to come join a challenge that we were running and got them to come join us in our email newsletter and everything else. That post arguably did a lot worse than the big top performing ones, but for our business, it was a lot more impactful. And we hit our tribe, we hit our people, and we generated opportunity for ourselves. And so, going back to this idea of like being authentic and showing up who you are as who you are, the right opportunities find themselves to you as
100%.
opposed to stuff that you don't want. And so the more that you can generate content in a way that feels natural to you and do things that feel authentic to you and show up as the same person that's going to jump on the Zoom call or the person that's going to be physically in person at an event with you, the more you're going to just like capitalize on the trust and the authority that you've built online and really be able to catapult it to different levels.
Digital has made us focus on the wrong things too much because too much can be measured, in my opinion.
Hmm.
I had Chris Walker on. I don't know if you know Chris or not, but he's pretty good follow on LinkedIn and loves to talk about dark social, and that's what we talked about on the podcast. But when we were in the course of going back and forth, one of the things I said to him was, Chris, like when I was growing up, everything was dark social. Like dark social was the moms sitting at the little league field in the stand saying, "Ooh, where did you get that shirt?" Now we have Facebook groups dedicated to brands or tribes or communities, and people are able to share this stuff in real time. And people like influencers are a completely different thing now than they were 30 years ago. Did we have influencers 30 years ago? Absolutely we did, but they didn't have the platforms and they
Hmm.
didn't have the optics and they didn't it was anybody really. It didn't have to be that person that was so well put together, and dressed perfectly and drove the nice car to get everybody's attention on the hook on their video. It was somebody's mom that likely was, chiefing a heater in one hand and feeding a baby in the other, and is talking about this great soup that she made, and here's the recipe. And everybody listens to this lady because, well, they were in the stands at the Little League field, and she looks like she knows what good soup looks like. Next thing you know, everybody's cooking
Hmm.
this soup, but nobody knew the other one was like. The whole thing is insane if you think about. We didn't have any of the metrics to know who clicked, who opened, who did this, who did that. Businesses did just fine. Now we have all this stuff, and I think people get so caught up in that at the very root of it, if you are just an authentic individual and you have something that is of value to other people that you don't mind sharing and you can freely share that in a voice, is it going to resonate with everybody? Absolutely not. But is it going to resonate with some people? Yes, it is. And those are your people. And you need to be okay with that. I don't
Hmm.
need millions of followers on any social platform. I probably don't even need thousands. But if you give me a few hundred of the right ones, oh my goodness, like I'm going to do a lot of damage with that.
Yeah. And I think that's the mental game that comes with all of this is being able to put it into perspective, recognizing the tool that you have at your disposal and how to use it in a way that's going to benefit you and leaving the rest. So like I've been doing it long enough now where I know that if I see impressions take a big like nosedive on a platform, whether that's LinkedIn or TikTok or whatever, I could let myself get really upset about it, or I could say like, oh, huh, well, hopefully there is someone that's in that crowd of 1,000 people that's the right one for me and they're going to want to work with us, or I helped them in some way and I'll keep going and maybe another one will take off some other day. But like you have to go through that like iteration of being able like seeing that those things come and go up and down and recognizing the world doesn't end and go touch the grass and then come back in and try again the next day. Like
Yeah, I
I
think
think
the
is a
other thing
really
is
important
people,
thing.
like you said, people overcomplicate. I also think they try and over engineer. Like, right? there's people out here that probably don't even know what the word algorithm means, but they're
Mhm.
like spouting it off like they spout off API to InsurTech because they want an integration. Don't have any idea what any of that means, but they just heard it somewhere and they know that they believe it would make their life easier. But they look at this stuff and they try and engineer it. Well, what's going to make the algorithm serve more people, or what's going to do this, or what's going to do that? The reality is good content that other people can relate to and they want to share. Like that's it. Like
Mhm.
it's really that simple. And if you can focus on just, you don't have to engineer it, but your voice is your voice. And if you can consistently put stuff out, it's ultimately going to take off. Period. Like we could beat this horse. It's been dead for 10 minutes now. So
I I would agree. I think, when it comes to your business and going back to like kind of what we were talking about getting started, like that overcomplication piece comes from trying to feel like you have to perform, which that's not what it's about. And we've actually seen like a pretty significant move in the direction of stuff that feels over engineered or over marketing guised. I don't know what word we would use there, like over prettied, not perform well either. So people are thriving, like look for real and authentic. They don't want, I mean, I see something with an M dash or a spaceship emoji and I immediately assume that it was Chat GPT and I don't want anything to do with it. And that's like coming from somebody that uses Chat GPT and like has an affinity towards technology. But if I'm going to follow someone and I'm going to spend my time engaging with what you've created, I want to know that it's coming from you and your experience. And so, like, getting back to that, like, the value that you bring as an agent or a broker is your human expertise and understanding of the industry, not something that's been watered down or that they could find from Google's AI generated search results on Google when they
or
ask a
Chat GPT
question.
themselves.
Yes. So like, but they don't even have to be savvy enough to go to AI. They can literally go Google a question
Yeah.
and AI is going to spit out something that's been watered down and consolidated from all of these different blog posts, which half of at this point might have been created by AI to begin with. And it's this weird like circle of content that just doesn't actually mean anything.
Like, how
Where
lazy are we becoming, honestly, in our social content ingestion too? Because the other thing I've noticed, look, okay, I'm David and I have a problem with this. I'm going to admit it, right? But I have started doing it on like longer threads. But like, even you go into Facebook right now and it's going to summarize what the entire comment thread was, what the majority of people are saying, what the detractors are saying, or whatever else. If I go in and it looks like it's 1,000 comments long, I'm going to read that 100% of the time just to see if I want to, go actually get into the nitty gritty of it. But to your point, you can't do a search now that the first option is the AI version of it. It's
no,
it's not
and
just Google, it happens on my iPhone too.
well, and the bigger, I mean, the more intense this AI influence on everything that we're doing is taking hold, the more like pushback there is and the more like move towards authenticity that there is. And, people will say that young people are all completely integrated with AI and using it to cheat in schools. But like if you actually go in and you look at comments from young people on TikTok, I saw a video the other day that was talking about people like name your age and whether or not you use AI. And going back, I actually did, this is how cool I am, go through hundreds of comments. I don't think I saw a single person
I'm usually in
under.
the comments for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to throw it out there.
You're the one that keeps people going with the entertainment. But like, I saw hundreds of comments of people under the age of 25 saying that they actually really detest what AI is doing to our society and don't want anything to do with it and don't use ChatGPT. They don't like what it's doing to the environment. They don't like the fact that we're outsourcing our thinking was something that I saw a lot, how it's taking humanity away from things. So if I'm going out and I'm buying an insurance policy and I don't have an agent that I trust and I put in a question and Google comes back with like a watered down, sanitized information for me. And then there's like blog posts that all look like they're written by ChatGPT. But then I go over to the video tab and I see a agent who has, even a couple hundred followers, it seems like they know
It's
what they're
probably going to
talking
be
about.
Ryan Hanley. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly,
And they're explaining something in a way that makes sense to me from human to human and explaining it in plain English in a way that I'm like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." Guess who I'm gonna call? I'm not gonna go back to the like crappy AI generated blog posts and go contact one of those agencies. I'm gonna talk to the person that actually made it make sense. And like from a research standpoint, over 60% of the time, people that are making buying decisions, both B2C and in like the commercial or like the direct to consumer space, they're doing it by the first person that gave them information in their buying cycle. So they're going out, they're doing research. They might research multiple options, but if you are the first person to teach them something during their buying cycle, they're gonna come back to you and they're going to trust you. And 60% of the time, and some, they're choosing to buy from you. And so like creating a couple of pieces of content that really speak to your buyer or really speak to whoever you want to build your audience for, that builds over time and it's only going to become more important because of that human connection and that like thirst for authenticity that we're starting to see really like bubble up because of AI.
Chat GPT is like the way I see most people using it, which I is typically the wrong way, is literally like copying your test answers off the person sitting at the desk next to you, except you have no idea who that person is and whether they studied and if they're even right. You know,
Yeah.
I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
you're literally flying blind when it comes to that stuff. And I mean, I use it for a lot of things. And there are times where I will put in what I want it to say in my LinkedIn post, but ask it to make it more concise or whatever. So I'm guilty. I'm not going to tell you that I have the rocket ship. I usually will take the emojis out, but I'll use it to help me structure something. But it's almost always, still in my words, my voice or whatever. They just pretty it up a little bit. But where I use it, it's not really to create content for me. It's more to organize the content that I've already got into a logical format or to give me ideas. Like if I wanted to start a LinkedIn newsletter, which I have, how easy would it be for me to go to ChatGPT and have the conversation that I'm thinking about starting a LinkedIn newsletter? Here's who I want the audience to be. Give me an idea of 52 topics that I could use one a week, in commercial insurance and risk management that would grab the reader's attention, blah, blah, blah. It's going to give me a list of 52 topics, right? Probably not all 52 are going to be things that I'm going to write on. So I'm going to have to go back and firm that up. But how long would it take for me to sit down and try and think of 52 topics, number one, or every week have to think of one topic knowing what I'm going to write on? What it has allowed me to do, and just to be clear, everybody, I've never done 52, but I have gotten like ideas for topics and then what's the framework that I want to use around that. It allows me to actually put together a much better and more well thought out newsletter, and I'm able to go deeper because I'm not spending my time trying to figure out what am I going to write about. Now I can actually write about what I'm going to write about and get the content out. But even along those lines, like one of the things we've done that's really cool and that we've used AI for is I do a weekly call with my community. It's an hour Zoom meeting. And what I've started doing is at the end of like when I get the Zoom recording back before we trim everything and put it up in the community, now I've started taking the transcript, running it through ChatGPT, having it giving me a summary of what the call was about, what are the key points, and give me 5 to 7 quotes that I said during the call that I can use on Twitter if I want to. And then I take it a step further and say, um, using the attached transcript, please create an outline for a blog post to discuss the things that we talked about on this call. And then ultimately, I have it create the blog post, not to be made as a blog, but it becomes the call recap. So now my community can look at a summary and say, "Yeah, I want to go read more of this," or I want to watch the whole hour." Or the next progression is, let me spend 3 to 5 minutes reading this couple thousand words that he put together that does a really good job of organizing everything. Then if they want to go in and get into the nuances, they can. But if they want to skip that week's call, they feel like they ingested it without having to spend an hour of their time doing it. And I mean, that's been a huge thing for us. But the other thing that we've done, like a couple weeks ago, we did one on telemarketing. And I'm like, you know what? I mean, we really didn't get as deep into this as I wanted to. Let's take the transcript and let's move the needle a little bit. Then I took that and said, I'm thinking about doing a 12 module learning management course on telemarketing. Using the attached transcript, give me an outline of what those lessons should be. And it gave me 12 of them. Then we could take that and create the transcript. I could take that, upload it into Synthesia. It's in my voice. It marries to my avatar and my voice cloning. And it used to take me weeks to sit and record this stuff, come up with all this. In under an hour from the time I got done with a community call, I have a 12 module learning management course that's being delivered by an AI version of me, my voice, but all my work product, because I leverage the technology to get it out faster. Now, am I going to say that's putting on my Sunday best to go out and try and bring new people into the community? No, probably not, because they're going to think I'm taking shortcuts. The people who are in my ecosystem know who I am, know that I'm authentic, and they know, holy crap, this guy actually figured out a way to get us even more, to make us even stronger producers quicker by using these tools. That's how I use it, but it's never going to think for me in terms of, maybe give me ideas topically, but not to write my stuff. I've always said, how embarrassing would it be for you to have a blog post written by ChatGPT that resonates with somebody enough they pick up the phone to call you, and when they're in the middle of the conversation, realize this ain't the person that wrote the blog post, because the voice is completely different. You have to remain authentic. You have to remain in your voice. That's the only way it works.
Yeah. No, and I think that point you just hit right there is the reason that like automating all of your social media, just having a conversation with an independent agent who was using a platform that's, insurance specific content, and it gives them posts for every single day. He was like, but nobody engages with it. It gets like, maybe one like, if that, there's barely any views on it. I'm paying for this subscription. Like, is it worth it? And I was like, I don't know. You tell me. Has it done anything for your business? And it's because that's not resonating with anybody. It doesn't have a real voice. And God forbid if somebody does call, it was written by somebody else that works for the software company that licensed out this platform to him instead of him himself. So, like, what good does that do for you and your organization? It doesn't do anything for you. You're better off posting once a week with something that's real and you, and you'll generate more business that way.
100%. What did we miss? I mean, we've been going for a while. I'm going to be respectful of your time.
I don't know. I think we're good. I mean, I could keep talking about this stuff for a long time if you've got questions that you want to dive into, but I think we've hit on enough to
I'd rather
hopefully
save it for another
get people
episode
going.
and have you come. Yeah, I'd rather save it for another episode and have you come back. If I'm being selfish, that's just a way to create more content.
There we go.
How do they get a hold of you if they want to know more? If they want to hire you to come and speak at their event or learn about your community, how do they do that?
So LinkedIn, Emma Roloff, but like we were talking about, it's EMA Roloff, or RoloffConsulting.com. I'm over on TikTok as well. I respond to my own messages. So if you shoot me a LinkedIn DM or a message on TikTok, or put in a form on our website, you'll hear back from me.
And by the way, she can multitask, because as I was posting pictures of us on LinkedIn, she was liking them. So I know
I did see it come through. I haven't commented yet because if I started typing, I would lose track of my thoughts. So
years of practice at this point. So listen, really enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. Definitely not the last time. And I have actually been off the road for the last year and a half or so from speaking, but the book that I told you from Carpool Closure that's coming out is coming out in October. So I am booking for fourth quarter and into next year now. So we will probably run into each other at some point.
wonderful. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a great weekend. Everybody else, we'll catch you next time. See ya.